Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Social Sciences, SOSS, Certificate Programs, Certificate Program in Disaster Management, CDM, English, CDM01 Foundation Course in Disaster Management, Block-1 Understanding of Disasters. Unit-1 Disaster Meaning, Factors and Significance. 1.0 Objectives. After studying this unit, you should be able to times discuss the meaning, definitions and types of disasters. Times describe the nature of disasters. Times highlight the aggravating factors of disasters. And times explain the significance and repercussions. 1 Introduction. A disaster is the result of an immediate situation or the result of a long-set process which disrupts normal human life in its established social, traditional and economic system. This is due to the destruction of environment which is caused by extraordinary natural destructive phenomena or human-induced hazards, resulting in human hardship and suffering beyond recovery unless external aid is brought in. 1.2 Meaning of disasters. The term disaster owes its origin to the French word désastre, which is the combination of the article des and astre, meaning star. In earlier days, a disaster was considered to be due to some unfavorable star. Nowadays, the term disaster is commonly used to denote any odd event, be natural or man-made, which brings about immense misery to a region, so that it becomes difficult to cope with this situation through local resources. 1st February 2001 Definitions. The dictionary meanings of disaster are as follows. 1. Disaster is a sudden or great misfortune or calamity. Concise Oxford Dictionary. 2. Disaster is a sudden calamitous event producing great material damage, loss, and distress. Webster's Dictionary. Disaster is assessed on the basis of the following features. 1. Disruption to normal pattern of life. Such disruption is usually severe and may also be sudden, unexpected and widespread. 2. Human effects such as loss of life, livelihood and property, injury, hardship, and adverse effects on health. 3. Effects on social structure such as destruction of or damage to infrastructure, buildings, communications and other essential services. 4. Community needs such as shelter, food, clothing, medical assistance and social care. The severity of a disaster situation is usually reckoned in terms of loss of life or property or both. A formal definition of disaster may be an event concentrated in time and space which threaten a society or a relatively self-sufficient subdivision of a society, with major unwanted consequences as a result of the collapse of precautions which had hitherto been culturally accepted as adequate. Turner, 1997. 1st February 2002 Distinction between hazard and disaster. Hazard and disaster are closely related. A hazard is a natural event while the disaster is its consequence. A hazard is a perceived natural event which threatens both life and property. A disaster is the culmination of such hazard. A hazard is a potential for disaster. A hazard becomes a disaster when it hits an area affecting the normal life system. If a hazard like a cyclone hits an unpopulated area, say an unpopulated coast, it need not be considered as a disaster. However, it will be considered a disaster if life and property are seriously damaged. A hazard may be regarded as pre-disaster situation in which some risk of disaster exists because the human population has placed itself in a situation of risk. Disasters are extreme events which cause great loss of life and or property and create severe disruptions to human activities. They can be created by human actions, e.g., transport accidents and industrial explosions or natural processes like earthquakes. A hazard is when extreme events or processes occur in an area of human settlement and could cause loss of life and damage to existing constructed resources or infrastructure. 1st February 2003 Distinction between natural and man-made disasters. Disasters are classified under various groups when studied according to origin or from functional angle. Although both types of disasters, natural or man-made, result in damage to life and property, their distinction can be identified by classifying into major group. 1. Natural disasters. 1. Wind-related, storm, cyclone, tornado, stone surge, tidal waves. 2. Water-related, flood, cloudburst, flash flood, excessive rains, drought. 3. Earth-related, earthquake, tsunamis, avalanches, landslides, volcanic eruptions. 2. Man-made disasters. 1. Accidents, road, rail, air, sea, building collapse. 2. Industrial mishaps, gas leak, explosion, sabotage, safety. 3. Fire, building, coal, oil. 4. Forest fire. In tropical countries, forest fires are often man-made. 5. Contamination poisoning, food, water, illicit liquor, epidemics. 6. Terrorist activities. 7. Ecological, pollution, air, water, noise, soil degradation, loss of biodiversity, global warming, sea level rise, toxic wastes, and nuclear accidents. 8. Warfare, conventional, chemical, nuclear. 1.3 Nature of disasters. As disasters have profound and often long-lasting effects on the people and their safety, it is essential to acquire fullest possible knowledge about their occurrence, impacts and precautions including remedial measures. However, study of disasters has many facets. While their mechanism requires the study of the scientific aspects of their genesis and life cycle, this impacts on the environment and society also need a multidisciplinary approach involving the social and medical services. Hence, scholars for studying disasters have adopted the following 6 approaches. 1. Geographical approach. In this, social science methods are widely used and emphasis is given to the spatio-temporal distribution of hazard, impacts and vulnerability. Geographers have also given particular thought to the question of how choices are made between different types of adjustment to natural hazards. 2. Anthropological approach. This approach has focused on the role of disasters in guiding the socio-economic evolution of populations in dispersing them and in causing the destruction of civilizations. A strong concern has led anthropologists to search for the threshold points beyond which local communities can no longer provide the basic requirements for survival of their members. 3. Sociological approach. In this approach, vulnerability and impacts all considered in terms of patterns of human behavior are indeed the effects of disasters on community. In addition, psychologists have studied disaster in relation 1 point factors such as psychologically Determine defensive reaction pattern. 4. Developmental studies approach. It considers problems of providing aid and relief, migration management, health care, and the avoidance of starvation. Over 80% of disasters occur in developing countries, and it is clear that the prevailing poverty increases human vulnerability to natural hazards. 5. Disaster medicine and epidemiology. It focuses on the management of mass casualties, the treatment of severe physical trauma, and the epidemiological surveillance of communicable diseases whose incidence rates may increase during the disruption of public health measures following a disaster. 6. Technical approach. The natural and physical scientists emphasize upon this approach. Emphasis is given to geological, geomorphological, and geophysical approaches to disasters. 1.4 Aggravating factors of disasters. The severity of the impacts of each disaster is reckoned in terms of deaths, damage, or costs, which are dependent on the existing socio-economic conditions of the affected community. In fact, the misery of the affected people is usually increased by the following aggravating factors. Poverty. All disaster studies show that the wealthy among the population are less affected and are able to recover quickly. However, poverty generally makes people more vulnerable to all the impacts of disasters. It is only due to poverty that poor people are forced to live in more vulnerable areas such as the floodplains of rivers. Usually droughts claim poor peasant farmers as victims and really the wealthy, and famines are the result of a lack of purchasing power to buy food rather than an absence of food. Many people are forced to move from their homes to other parts of their countries or even across borders to survive. Such crisis-induced migration poses considerable challenge both in terms of immediate assistance and long-term planning for development. Population growth. There is an obvious link between the increase in losses from a disaster and increase in population density. If there are more people and structures where a disaster strikes, there will be more impact. Increasing number of people will compete for limited resources, e.g., employment opportunities, which can lead to conflict. This conflict may result in crisis-induced migration. This type of growth occurs predominantly in developing countries, which may aggravate the two disasters. Rapid urbanization. Rapid population growth and migration are closely related to the major phenomenon of rapid urbanization. It is characterized by rural poor or people in disadvantaged areas moving to urban and metropolitan areas in search of economic opportunities and security. These people find fewer options for availability of safe and desirable places to build their houses. Here again, competition for scarce resources can lead to social conflicts. Many of the landslides or flood disasters are closely linked to rapid and unchecked urbanization, which forces low-income families to settle on the slopes of steep hillsides or banks of rivers. Transitions in cultural practices. Many of the inevitable changes that occur in all societies lead to an increase in their vulnerability to disasters. Obviously, all societies are constantly changing and are in a continual state of transition. These transitions are often disruptive and uneven, leaving gaps in social coping mechanisms and available technology. These transitions include nomadic population that become sedentary, rural people who move to urban areas, and both rural and urban people who move from one economic level to another. More broadly, these examples are typical of a shift from non-industrialized to industrialized societies. Environmental degradation. Many disasters are either caused or aggravated by environmental degradation. Deforestation leads to rapid rain runoff, which contributes to soil erosion and flooding. The destruction of mangrove swamps decreases the resistance of the coastline to withstand strong winds and storm surges. Drought conditions may be intensified by deforestation, overgrazing, dust stripping of topsoil, poor conservation techniques, depletion of both the surface and subsurface water supply, and to an extent, unchecked population. Lack of awareness and information. Lack of awareness and proper information usually converts a hazard into a disaster. This ignorance may not necessarily be due to poverty, but due to a lack of awareness of what measures can be taken to build safe structures on safe locations. Perhaps some people did not know about safe evacuation route and procedure. Other population may not know where to turn for assistance in times of acute distress. In most disaster-prone societies, although there are a traditional wealth of understanding about disaster threats and responses, yet they may not know what specific steps they should take immediately to escape the crisis. War and civil strife. War and civil strife are regarded a hazard, that is, extreme events that produce disasters. The causal factors of war and civil strife include competition for scarce resources, religious to ethnic intolerance, and ideological differences. You are listening to this audiobook on Audio Learn IGNOU. 1.5 Significance and Repercussions. Disaster has significance and repercussions in global, national, and local terms. It retards the development process not only in the affected area region but extends to the neighboring regions or countries as well. In global terms, disasters have serious repercussions for the future. The world is already facing a range of environmental and subsistence crises. The political, economic, and social stability of the world depends on bridging the socio-economic gap between developing and developed nations. In national terms, the impact of disasters usually results in major setbacks to the economy and the developmental process. It produces the direct loss of existing national assets in various forms. Also, it diverts national resources and effort away from ongoing subsistence and development activities in order to achieve satisfactory recovery. In local terms, the requirements of the community need realistic assessment taking into consideration the expected occurrence of the types of vulnerability, enabling resources to strengthen the local coping mechanisms have to be made available. 1.6 Summary. In this unit, we discuss the meaning and types of the disasters and the distinction between natural and man-made disasters, the nature of disasters, and the different approaches adopted to study disasters have been explained. The unit also highlighted the aggravating factors of disasters, the significance and repercussions of disasters at global, national, and local levels have been indicated. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.